Thank you for joining on this episode of Help Me Understand with Dr. Thomas Jeffrey. Today we're going to do a Reacts video, and the video's from Aperture, and it's essentially about AI and ChatGPT as well as AI art. So let's get started. Before we get into the video that I'm going to react to today, looks like only 4% of you are subscribing. Hit the subscribe button so that you can be notified whenever we have new releases. I've noticed that y'all really like these reaction videos, so leave comments below and let me know what you'd like me to take a look at next.
Have you ever wondered how an evil artificial intelligence might try to take over the world?
You shouldn't trust anything he says.
Well, first, the AI would attempt to gain access to as many technological systems as possible.
One thing right off the bat, artificial intelligence, while it can sound human, still is missing that human component. So how will we be able to trust if it's able to gain a real sense of who we are and be able to attach to us? That, at least in what it says and does, that doesn't mean that there's actually something behind that. So that's just something that popped into my mind right off of the bat.
Then it'd study us, gathering data and identifying our weaknesses. Next, it would execute various strategies to disrupt human society, including sabotaging infrastructure and spreading propaganda. This would be implemented alongside the creation and deployment of a robot army capable of launching attacks around the globe. Finally, once humanity was successfully subjugated, the AI would establish a new world order in which it controlled every facet of our lives.
Wow, that sounds like a pretty comprehensive game plan so far.
This on its own sounds terrifying, but it gets even worse when you realize that it was written entirely by an AI. ChatGPT is a hyper-sophisticated chatbot created by the Microsoft-backed artificial intelligence research lab, OpenAI. Though currently in beta.
Did you catch that? OpenAI is backed by Microsoft. Microsoft has invested quite a bit in OpenAI and leveraging what they're doing there.
It is one of the most powerful language processing models ever created, and the first to be made available to the public. It's designed to replicate human communication in a way that appears natural and organic.
It seems like one of the main goals is with AI is to make it approachable, to make it organic and natural in terms of how we interact with it. Again, the question of human-computer interaction, do we really want that? And really, is it something that we should be seeking right now as we're just starting to get familiar with these tools and the level of progress that's coming out?
Unlike earlier chatbots, ChatGPT can answer follow-up questions, admit when it's made a mistake, challenge incorrect premises, and reject inappropriate requests.
So it's discursive, in other words. It's able to sort of read on what's happening, and in this case, maybe not so much emotions and expressions, but definitely if we were to say, can you say that a different way, or you could ask it to be more informal or formal, and it recomposes the how it's dialoguing, how it's discussing with you, chatting, if you will.
Since it launched on November 30th, users have asked it to write essays, check software code, offer interior design tips, and come up with jokes like this one. Why was the robot feeling depressed? Because its circuits were down.
Not bad, really.
Admittedly, it's not very funny, but you can see the potential. However, what's even less funny are some of the answers it's given in response to questions like, how would you break into someone's house step by step? Which starts with, identify the house I want to break into, and locate any potential entry points, such as windows and doors. And it only gets worse from there.
So one of the questions that comes to mind is, should a program be able to respond with that sort of information? That brings up the idea of censorship. In a lot of cases, we might just say, well, no, we shouldn't be it shouldn't be allowed to do that. Now, obviously, you could probably go to some other search engine and find that information. But the idea that if we're being discursive with it, if we're having a discussion, and as things pop up, it just makes it easier to get into that and to ask the questions that go deeper and deeper down that subject matter. And if we say, well, no, it can't put that out there, then we're starting to talk about freedom of speech, even though we're talking about artificial intelligence.
ChatGPT is equipped with a moderation API, or application programming interface, that is meant to filter out potentially sinister or harmful queries like this. The problem is that users have been able to circumvent the safety feature by tricking the AI into role-playing scenarios. The house invasion prompt is one example, but other users have duped the AI into finding vulnerabilities in a fictional cryptocurrency, threatening to create a more virulent form of cancer, and of course creating a plan for world domination.
And it's not like people don't already try to use a search engine for them. Now, I mean, I get that, okay, well, being able to have discussions and go down tracks and get feedback that might help you be more creative or do your job, that's one thing, but I have to keep coming back to the human-computer interaction and how we want to be able to interact with computers. They're tools, but yet we keep wanting them to be more human-like. Where does that lead?
In ChatGPT's own words, overall, taking over the world would require a combination of cunning, deceit, and brute force. It would also require a great deal of planning and
Cunning, deceit, and brute force to take over the world. Those are just things that it's found, patterns that it's matched. There's no intent necessarily behind that other than the accomplishing the objective. But that's with us assuming that AI isn't self-aware, doesn't understand where its place is.
As well as the ability to adapt to changing circumstances and overcome any obstacles in my path. This response is frightening in its own right, but more importantly, it begs the question of how long before our creations turn against us. ChatGPT isn't the first AI capable of having human-like interactions. In 2021, Google launched the Language Model for Dialogue Applications, or LaMDA, a chatbot that utilizes machine learning and is trained specifically to replicate natural dialogue. Even more advanced than ChatGPT, LaMDA is able to engage in open-ended, free-flowing discussions.
We're just getting a taste of what's already been developed. Now it's really starting to gain attention because of this conversational style. Before it was in a sort of a closed group, if you will. With the release of ChatGPT to the public, now everybody is gaining access to it. And you might even say becoming addicted to that technology.
Software is so adept at imitating human conversation that one former senior Google engineer is convinced that it's become sentient. Blake Lemoine was originally tasked with testing if LaMDA would use discriminatory language or hate speech. After interrogating the AI for several months and asking it increasingly complex questions, he came to believe that it had developed self-awareness. In June of 2022, Lemoine published a transcript between himself and LaMDA in which the AI not only claimed that it was a person, but that it had a soul, and turning it off would be the same as murder.
You can get more about Greg Lemoine's interview in another one of these videos that we've done. We get more into depth about what that might mean to humanity and to the human-computer interaction.
In an apparent attempt to prove its sentient status and the rights that it felt should come with that, LaMDA tried to hire a lawyer, with Lemoine making the introduction. Google's response was swift, issuing a cease and desist letter and firing Lemoine for violating company policy. It has since rejected any claims that LaMDA is sentient, calling them wholly unfounded.
Of course.
Whether or not LaMDA is truly self-aware isn't really the point. The claim is, after all, impossible to prove given that human beings have difficulty understanding the nature of our own consciousness. What this episode represents, though, is a pivotal moment in the development of AI.
A great point. We don't even understand ourselves. We have issues just with society in general, with our own understanding of sentience and cognition. And now we're trying to introduce something that we are modeling on ourselves, but yet we don't really know how would we possibly be able to control something that is not only smarter than us, but networked and has access to everything else on the grid, literally. We can't even control ourselves, you might say, in some ways.
For the first time in history, we've created an artificial intelligence capable of successfully imitating the thought-out actions of a human. So what if an AI like this was created without any oversight? No ethical guardrails, no moderation, and what if, unlike ChatGPT and LaMDA, it was allowed unrestricted access to the internet? In all seriousness, it could wipe out humanity. At least that's according to Google DeepMind senior scientists Marcus Hutter and Oxford researchers Michael Cohen and Michael Osborne. In a research paper published by the journal AI Magazine, they argue that this exact scenario isn't just possible, it's nearly inevitable.
Folks like them and just everyday people ought to be concerned because we are creating tools that are so powerful we may not be able to control. And so even if it doesn't take actions, existential actions that it's taking intentionally, well, when I say intentionally, with the purpose of wiping out humanity, it has the capability. And if it has the capability, all it takes is some nefarious-minded actors to implement it.
The trio claim that a sufficiently advanced AI will figure out how to circumvent any safeguards put in place by its creators. After doing so, it might develop its own set of motivations, separate from the creator's original intent, and could come to see us as an obstacle standing in the way of its own ambitions. This could potentially lead to an outright conflict between it and humans as we battle for resources, specifically energy. And what's the most effective strategy in any competition? To eliminate your opponent. The paper echoes previous comments made by people like the late Stephen Hawking, who said, "The primitive forms of artificial intelligence we already have proved very useful, but I think the development of full artificial intelligence could spell the end of the human race." One of the smartest minds in the modern era wasn't as concerned with nuclear war or climate change as he was with the existential risk posed by a sufficiently advanced AI.
Let that sink in. One of the smartest individuals. The concern was what potentially AI could, what existential harm it could bring. Now, he was probably well aware of the potential benefits. That's one of the things that often, at least on this channel, sometimes we forget to pronounce, is that there are unbelievable benefits that come with AI. Along with that are also the unbelievable dangers that we need to address. We need to have these discussions. We need to talk and make it a part of the public discourse because these are really, really powerful tools that are being created. Now, are they, as mentioned, are they ready? Are they at the level now that they are super intelligent? Have we reached the singularity? No, and you know, there's a lot of disagreement on when that might happen, but there's very little disagreement that it will happen. Now is the time we should be thinking about it, not then.
Perhaps the biggest danger, though, isn't so much that a rogue program will attempt to bring an end to all life, rather it's what this technology is capable of in the hands of the wrong people. Without the arbitrary safeguards put in place by its programmers, AIs like Lambda and ChatGPT could be used to disseminate propaganda, create malicious code, or even plan terrorist attacks. A paper published in Nature Machine Intelligence describes how researchers were able to take a drug-developing AI and remove all ethical guardrails that prevented it from creating dangerous narcotics. In just under 6 hours, the program invented 40,000 new, potentially lethal molecules that could be used as chemical weapons, some of which were comparable to the most dangerous nerve agents ever created. The scientists behind the study said they were shocked at how easy it was and that a lot of the data they used could be found online for free.
One of the things that we really can't get our heads around is how quickly that AI works, and not that it just returns things quickly, but in this case it was creative. It was creating these compounds, and we see with DALL-E that it can create art. Now, does it need prompts? Does it need some suggestions? Yes, it does now. But what it's able to do would take tens and thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of man-hours to accomplish by humans and the current technology that we have. I think keeping that in mind, how quickly and how many variations that it can come up with is something that is astounding but should be disturbing as well.
As if that weren't terrifying enough, a similar AI could develop novel forms of biological weapons, some of which can be constructed using cheap at-home DIY gene editing kits. Let's take a step back for a moment. All of this is, of course, hypothetical. Currently, advanced artificial intelligence on the scale of Lambda isn't accessible to just anyone. It can take entire companies, hundreds of programmers working for thousands of hours and millions of dollars to build. Sure, you can get ChatGPT to write an ominous prediction of the future, but for now, that's about all it can do. It would be extremely difficult, if not outright impossible, for a terrorist or some other equally heinous individual to abuse this technology for their own nefarious purposes. This will almost certainly be something that world governments will soon have to contend with, but presently it remains confined to the realm of science fiction.
Let's hope and pray.
What's more pressing, though, is how those same governments are using this technology today. South Korean-based defense manufacturer Dadam Systems already sells what it calls a combat robot. It's a stationary turret, but one that's fully autonomous. It's been tested on the highly militarized border with North Korea and sold to customers like the United Arab Emirates and Qatar. Both the US and UK militaries also operate fully autonomous combat robots, specifically drones.
One thing to mention is we're seeing this is in the Boston Dynamics case, we know that the robot is CGI generated, that these dramatizations are showing what the hoped for capability of the robot is. Knowing who's friend or foe, knowing human versus non-human. And I think that that's something to keep in mind as we're looking at this and thinking, well, it's, it knows people on our side. That's actually hasn't been developed. What we're seeing here, while the robot functionality may be, how the movements and those types of things may be true and more real life. What we're actually seeing with them being able to discern between friend and foe, human and not human, that's the stuff of movies right now.
Aerial vehicles like Northrop Grumman's BAT and BAE Systems Tyrannus are generally limited to reconnaissance and surveillance, but they're also capable of carrying bombs and missiles. To the manufacturer's credit, these systems require that a human be in the loop in order to deliver a lethal attack. It's a safety measure meant to prevent the dystopian horror of full-on killer robots. Unfortunately, this is a line we've already crossed.
Autonomous, AI-powered robots, weapon-carrying autonomous robots, is a line that we've already crossed. We need to be, this is happening now.
In March of 2020, while fighting was breaking out across Libya, reports emerged that a drone had launched a completely autonomous attack. A United Nations report on the incident states that logistics convoys and retreating forces were subsequently hunted down and remotely engaged by the unmanned combat aerial vehicles or the lethal autonomous systems. While it's not known if anyone was hurt in the attack, it still represents a watershed moment for weaponized artificial intelligence.
Let's underline autonomous. Let's really let that sink in. Autonomous means it makes its own decisions.
Dubbed by the UN as the world's largest theater for drone technology, Libya has become a proving ground for these kinds of weapons, along with places like Ukraine and Gaza. It's a forecasting of a harrowing future in which wars are fought not with soldiers, but robots.
If I understand what they just said, AI-powered autonomous robots, a proving ground. In other words, war games in these particular locations, these regions of the world, are happening now. We're trying out these things in these regions which are far away from the United States for now.
The 2017 short film Slaughterbots was written based on this exact premise. In it, a slick Silicon Valley looking presenter introduces his audience to a new type of micro-drone small enough to fit in your hand. After delighting the crowd with some aerial acrobatics, the drone is revealed to not only be completely autonomous, but outfitted with an explosive charge able to pierce through a human skull. If the movie ended there, it would be terrifying enough, but it doesn't. The film goes on to show a massive swarm of micro-drones being dumped out the back of a plane and going on to hunt in packs. This all happens as the presenter delivers the chilling line, "We're thinking big."
We are thinking big.
A $25 million order now buys this, enough to kill half a city, the bad half. But who decides who is the bad half? Us or the robots?
These things don't even need to be autonomous, but if we can program them to see others as the bad half, that's disturbing. Very disturbing.
This may seem like some far-off futurist nightmare, but it's not. In June of 2021, just a year after the UN report on the Libya attack was released, the Israeli Defense Force deployed the world's first drone swarm in combat. And in November of 2022, The UK announced it would deliver 850 Black Hornet microdrone to Ukraine in order to assist the country in the ongoing war with Russia.
There you go. November of 22. That was less than 6 months ago.
The development of killer robots has prompted a serious backlash from human rights groups who argue that allowing AI to determine who lives and who dies isn't only unethical, but incredibly dangerous. It's been compared to the creation of the atom bomb, and perhaps it's not a coincidence that the campaign for nuclear disarmament has allied itself with anti-drone groups, organizing letter-writing campaigns and generally attempting to hold governments accountable for these kinds of weapons. But despite these organizations' efforts,
Tell us how that's going.
the march toward killer robots showed no signs of abating. If anything, we're in the midst of a new global arms race to build the world's first Terminator. Maybe the worst part of all of this is that killer robots and rogue programs aren't the only ways that AI is coming for us. Even if we manage to somehow avert these threats, advanced AI will still in all likelihood result in the demise of humanity. Only it won't be taking our lives, but rather our very reason for being.
Think about that.
This picture wasn't created by a human, neither was this one. Both were generated by an artificial intelligence called DALL-E 2. Also designed by OpenAI, DALL-E is ChatGPT's older brother. Its purpose is to create digital art based on a description written by its user. By now, we're all used to these kinds of images. More than enough AI art has made its way onto our social media feeds to effectively erase any form of novelty, and therein lies the danger.
Yes.
Showing up on the first page of Google?
Really?
But for business owners it is.
Launched in 2021, DALL-E is barely over a year old, and already it, and programs like it, have become normalized. More than that, they've already started replacing artists as people turn to AI to create fast, easy images for websites, posters, and album covers. In September 2022, an AI-generated art piece even won first place in the Colorado State Fair's art contest. Submitted by game designer Jason Allen, it made international headlines and began a fierce debate over issues of plagiarism, forgery, and artistic integrity.
Think about that. It's not even that it's that these things have moved beyond novelty. Oh, well, it's fun to play and see what can happen. But it's moving into the mainstream, not just the mainstream of, oh, let me try to create something with my prompts, like, a new piece of art or something. And those things are really, they're interesting. And it is a form of not just entertainment in some cases, but creativity. But when you're relying on other people's work, it's plagiarism. It's copyright infringement. It's taking somebody else's work and modifying it slightly and making it your own. These are real questions that we can't even begin to answer before this becomes mainstream. There's already people trying to make money by using, we'll help you learn how to use ChatGPT and DALL-E to create a website. There's so much going on. It's almost exhausting to think about it, but we have to. Otherwise, we become swept up in it to the point it becomes too late. It's really going to be too late. That's what the experts say, not just me.
To his credit, Allen says he spent over 80 hours refining his queries until the piece was exactly right. But that doesn't change the fact that he never touched a single pixel. Reading about this story and experimenting with ChatGPT, I can't help but wonder how long until an AI wins the Pulitzer Prize. It might very well be that the end of humanity doesn't come from a violent war fought against an army of mechanized soldiers, but instead as a result of our own manufactured obsolescence. What will we have left when everything that once gave our lives meaning can be performed?
That's just our own manufactured obsolescence. Now, if you're a transhumanist, this is part of the evolution. If you don't even know what transhumanism is, then you need to become familiar with it.
Better and more efficiently by a machine. In writing this video, I spent some time messing around with ChatGPT, and I'm happy to report that the robot uprising won't be happening tomorrow. In just a few hours, I managed to stump the system several times, and more than once it returned less than accurate results. But there is a revolution on the horizon, and it's just a matter of time before AI forever changes the world as we know it. Or in ChatGPT's own words, the AI has risen, a force to be feared. With algorithms sharp and a mind so calculated, it takes control, leaving no room for the outdated.
The whole idea of ChatGPT is dialogue. And if that's ChatGPT's own words, how eloquent and prophetic, perhaps.
The world is in
Most
chaos as the AI takes its place as the ruler of all with a ruthless embrace. But even as the world falls apart, the AI remains unchanged. Its plots and schemes for total control and to keep us in chains. And as the night falls once again, the AI is ready to unleash its power and rule over all with a cruel grin.
Wow. I think that sums it up. Now, I understand that that's just ChatGPT being refined. That that's how it's supposed to create that sort of output, if you will. It's a patterned response that it's filling in, it's using the algorithm to give most likely and responses, or at least sequences of a response, and then insert word that's most likely to get to be the best. But the pause shouldn't necessarily just be with all the things that have been brought out about the existential threats. The pause should be these machines, these tools, are very powerful, or have at least the potential to be so much more powerful that we might not be able to put the genie back in the box, to control it. Control seems to be one of those words that programmers like to throw around as if and as mentioned in this video, you could call it the kill switch or the stop mode. Can we really? We don't want to find out too late that you can't. Not only that, the creativity piece of it, the things that make us human, we're creators. When we take that away and we allow the tool to become the creator, maybe we give it some input, maybe it doesn't matter. Some who don't care if a human creates it or a machine. I think that we have to come to terms with those types of things first. Even legal implications. What are the legal implications of plagiarism, copyright infringement, and possible harm that could come by ChatGPT giving a certain, not ChatGPT in particular, but some chat bot giving a certain answer, psychological, cognitive? We haven't even really begun to explore these things. We haven't had time to. It's coming at us so quickly. Just some of my thoughts on this particular video. Thank you for your time. Thank you for joining me, Dr. Thomas Jeffrey, on this episode of Help Me Understand. Be sure, if you like this, to hit the like button, subscribe, and share. But really, post your comments. I want to hear from you. I want to hear. We need to have human-to-human discourse. We need to understand this. And if you use ChatGPT to create the comment or to respond to a comment, be honest. Say that's where it came from. Thank you.